There we go. Now I can. Thank you. I would like to call to order our Monday study session for January 27th. The time is 11:14. Sorry for the delay. Rules went a little bit long. All council members are here except for Councilmember Yambe and
He's online. I'm moving him over.
Councilmember Yambe is online and Councilmember Morrell, who is excused. And we will get off the start right here. Any changes to the agenda? Assuming we don't. Okay, Mr. Shaw and Mr. Taylor, are you tag teaming on this?
I'll just thank you, Hugh Taylor, council staff. Just a quick introduction. So, of course, Mr. Shaw, our state legislative affairs consultant, is present today to provide the weekly legislative update. In your packet is the updated watch list for the county, beginning at page 2 of your study session packet. So that'll be the quick introduction. I know you're running a little behind. So with that, Mr. Shaw.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Shaw.
Good morning. Good morning, members of the council. It's Taylor. Again, Mike Shaw, welcome to week 3. My gosh, it has been a sprint so far. And if you look at our watch list, it's only a couple of hearings, but if you look at the comprehensive bill tracking list, it's 10 pages of hearings. So they are packed. And at this point, last I checked the bill introductions, we were over 1,000, probably over 1,100 at this point and going. Let me just bring you up to speed from last week since we spoke. A lot of the big hearings, I believe, Chair, I think we're working on the rent bill that was heard in the Senate. They already heard the House version. Some of the big bills, it seems like they took the big meaty ones in the first 2 weeks. So you saw the rent control bill, you saw the competency bill 1218, you saw the criminal justice funding bill 5060, all done these first weeks. It seems like now they're getting into the meat and potatoes bills, right? That's going to take up a lot, and there are a lot of them. A couple other things that happened last week that I want to bring attention to is there was a vote late Friday on the House floor. And the House permanent rules, when they adopt them, it's usually just they work on the edges. It's usually not a big deal and they pass. This time there were some substantial changes. The most notable, the one that has all of us lobbyists scurrying around, is in the House, each member can speak on a question 10 minutes. But it takes a supermajority, you can close debate and call the question. What they did is they changed that to a simple majority vote so they can shut debate with a simple majority. That actually is what the Senate rules are right now. But it is a big change. It's a change of a rule that goes back to, 1893. So that was big. But another rule change that was interesting for those of us who, again, scurrying around the halls was in the past, the governor and his staff were always allowed in the House wings during floor debate. They had access to the floor. They changed it so only the governor has access to the wings now. So everyone was trying to read the tea leaves. What does that mean? Is that showing that there are issues? So it was kind of an interesting for what usually is a pretty much a yawn fest procedural vote. They're getting going fast this session. So with that, there was that. Let's talk about our watch list real quick. Again, not a lot of hearings. Excuse me, I'll put my glasses on here. The 5284, which is the Senate companion to this is the RAP, the REACT Act, that bill that deals with product stewardship. That bill has a hearing. The executive session on 5052, I think we've talked about this, Councilman Herrera, in regards to law enforcement ability to contact juveniles without an attorney present. And there is a couple bills that on behavioral health, primary care, and affordable hospital services dealing with rates. It's a healthcare request bill, Department I'm sorry, I forget the name of the agency. I'll get back to you. But that has a hearing. And so I'm been following that because one of the Pierce County legislative agenda items is reimbursement rates. Try to get those reimbursement rates up so that service providers, so we get more folks being able to get served. that's really it on the hearings, but there are a couple bills I wanted to bring to your attention. The public defense bill, that bill has a number, it actually has two numbers now because we have a House version. That's, the Senate version is 5404. I believe it has 12 signatures on it right now. The House version is 1592. Now, at this point, they haven't been set for a hearing yet, but they have some pretty impressive signatures on it. Just real quick, that's the bill that says the state of Washington, you're responsible for 50% of the cost of indigent defense, coming up with a number over the last, I think from 2024 back about 4 years. And then for increases, the state is on the hook. The State Office of Public Defense has a supervisory role. If we try to supplant money from that, they have an ability to approve it. And there's a lot of data collection that's involved in this, as you would think. So there's a lot in this bill. That's the highlights. It brings the issue probably as far as it's gotten. When we've brought this issue up in the past, I don't think we've gotten this far. I do think the Senate bill will get a hearing. At that point, it remains to be seen what will happen. Will it become then a budget question? Will it become a budget negotiation? You know, where it goes from there. But I just want to bring that to your attention. Just going back to budgets, as we talked before, it's a very dire budget picture in Olympia. We expect that the revenue forecast March 20th will also be grim. What I've been told is that there's not a lot of consensus between the two chambers on as far as revenues, and that expect bills towards the end of February. And if you see a bill in the House and there's a companion bill in the Senate on a revenue bill, that's probably a good indication that it's real. So we're going to have to wait a bit. I just wanted to kind of give you that little bit of gossip that's going around the Olympia. The other bit is that the House leadership, the chairs have been told, don't pass bills out of your substantive policy committees and expect them to be dealt with in appropriations. If they have big fiscal impacts, you need to address that in the policy committee. I don't send them forward. I'm not kind of seeing to see if that is just gossip among lobbyists or is that actually happening? I'm not seeing it so. So as far as other bills, I wanted to bring your attention to, there is a bill on, again, there was a competency evaluation restoration bill, but there's another bill with regards to disabilities. It's currently the counties are the source. The money comes from the state. The counties distribute the money with regards to folks with disabilities. There is a bill, I believe it's 1158, Representative Lovett's bill, that would change that. It would have the state money, just that the state would handle that responsibility. And I believe Chair Hitchen, you're aware of this, and it seems to have a roots in Pierce County. There's a number of families in Pierce County that have brought this forward. So it's something that the county association has taken on. They're working with the prime sponsor, trying to deal with those concerns, but it's something that I have on the list and we need to probably keep on our radar. The other bills that I wanted to bring you your attention, new bills, 1582, Representative Caldier on child sighting. Councilmember Denson knows more about this bill than I, but that was introduced. And
Good.
and,
In a good way.
And there was another bill that I hope to be on here. We don't have a number yet, but there is a real estate excise tax bill, airport bill that has been introduced. The prime sponsor called me over the weekend. He said he dropped it in the hopper, introduced it. Too late to get on to get a number signed at that point, but it should appear today. I believe Representative Dent will be the prime sponsor. The second signature is Representative Jake Fye. The third signature is Representative Barkus, another Pierce County. So if you have an opportunity to talk to your legislators, please ask them to sign on to the bill. Again, I'll get you the number as soon as we get, they have 48 hours after it's introduced to put their names onto it. But I will, if you have a chance, that would be wonderful. And with that, There's the county ferry bill, and it was passed out of committee. It is now sitting in House Rules, so it seems to be, it was a unanimous vote, which is good because we can then hopefully get it on that calendar they do when they're drinking their coffee in the morning, where they do all the unanimous votes, and hopefully we just get that thing moving right along. There are so many, again, our watch list, which I try to keep to 1 to 2 pages, is 5 pages. The larger comprehensive bill tracking list, that's 54 pages, of which 10 pages granted are just hearings. So the number of bills, it's amazing amount of number of bills we're seeing. And I kind of want to remind you of important dates at this point. The 21st of next month, February, is the first bill cutoff. That's the policy committee cutoff. That is a little over 3 weeks away. Right after that, about a week later, is the fiscal committee cutoff. And then they're on the floor action. They get to debate their own bills until about the 12th of, I believe, of March. So about a little under 2 weeks. And then they go right back in. But to give you an idea of then how tight the cutoffs come at this point, they have less time to hear all, for instance, the House to hear all the Senate bills than we have between now and the first cutoff. They only have about 3 weeks to hear all those bills. And then a very quick fiscal committee cutoff, and et cetera. I just want to bring that up. And in between those dates that I've been throwing at you is that March 20th revenue forecast, which could blow everything up. So with that, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for the overview, and excited that one of the pieces was the ferry bill. So we'll just see what else we can do. Some good news was good. Vice Chair Herrera.
Thank you, Chair. This is probably not specifically with bills. It's just like what's kind of going on down there with the possible cuts that are coming when it comes to the departments. I'll just use one for an example, like the Washington Department of Veterans Affairs, talking about a 6% cut. When will we know, like, is it the directors that are going to be telling what's going to get cut? Or so we know where the gaps are, boots on the ground, and how it's going to affect people that live in our communities, like our veterans here in Pierce County, if there is that cut. When will we know that part?
Oh my.
Or is that something out of your pay grade?
Yeah, very much so. But I believe the departments have already been asked to bring forward their cuts. So you might recall Governor Ferguson, he wants 4.4 billion in cuts submitted to him through the departments. But we don't know where those cuts are coming. Normally, you would look to the governor's budget. But of course, Governor Inslee, on his way out, he came up with a budget that had $13 billion in revenue attached to it. So you didn't see where those cuts would be. So I think a lot of us are in the dark.
Okay. Just want to keep an eye out because we sometimes have to fill in some of those gaps possibly or whatnot when it comes not just to veterans, but other sorts.
Definitely something to keep an eye on. Councilmember Gruber.
Thank you, Chair. Could you explain to me on the cut? Are we looking at cuts of potential projects? So if we're planning a $2 billion project in XYZ and that gets cut, that's 2 billion that of planned expenditures and that counts as a cut? Or is it actual numbers of things that are being funded, like, or maybe cuts in staff or other, how are we differentiating cuts?
I think it's when the department's cuts, it's the latter. But I think you also bring up, when we focus on the operating budget, the transportation budget is also in bad shape. I believe it's over 6 years, it's 6.6 billion that they have to figure out how to deal with. And it's been interesting. The last 2 weeks, we've seen various stakeholder meetings on the road usage charge that was pulled together. There's been one on the green transportation grants that was pulled together this last week to try to look at alternative revenue sources. A lot of projects that were, we thought were funded were pushed into the supplemental as reappropriations. So I think on the project side of things, on the transportation side, I should probably say that the transportation side of things, I don't think we quite know on which projects will be reappropriated and which will survive. I don't think there is agreement between the House and the Senate on how they want to approach this. There's rumors in the Senate that they want to do a large, something that is also tied to the operating budget. That'd be one, that there would be some tax votes that would essentially solve both the operating and the transportation side. You're not hearing that on the House side. So I wish I had better tea leaves to read for you.
Where's your crystal ball?
I've been wrong so many times.
What about things like the wind farm project I've heard about over in Eastern Washington? Is that perhaps on a chopping block, or is that like, oh no, don't touch?
Oh my.
Do we know?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. We have a new governor, which means new staff, new leaders in the agencies. I'm sorry. I wish I had a better answer for you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for the questions. Councilmember Ayala.
Thank you, Chair. First and foremost, I want to say thank you for existing in the space of such ambiguity and transition. I know there's a lot going on there. I'm curious, two separate questions. The first, I know in our priorities, there were some capital type projects in there. If you had to have your best estimation of when we would have a realistic sense of if that will go through, whether or not it's those cutoff dates, when would you say that is?
With regards to the capital budget, it's not nearly as in bad shape. But I think there's some issue, and I'm kind of looking at Mr. Taylor on this, that some of our park requests, talking to the folks in the execs staff, they found there's problems with those. So they're actually asked staff to look back and say, are these, Mr. Taylor, am I correct in that, that we are essentially having to relook at those projects?
Thank you,
Mr. Taylor.
Hugh Taylor, council staff. So the new executive administration is reviewing the requests that were identified as priorities. Some of the requests may not have been as well developed as they needed to be prior to making the ask of the state legislature. So primarily in the parks space. And so that exercise is going on right now, and we'll have some additional information to share once that's complete. A number of the asks that are on the list that are parks are ripe and ready to go. For instance, the Chambers Creek Canyon Bridge Replacement Project is a good example. But there are a couple I've been told that need additional development before they're ready to seek funding.
Thank you. And then my second question, originally designed for that, but open. Where do you think that we could provide the most advocacy, or where can we lean in addition to the ask you made earlier about reaching out to our legislators?
Yep. I believe Mr. Taylor has the capital project form. So that would, the first thing is to make sure that form gets submitted before the deadline. And the capital budget, I believe, is, I want to say it's in February. Mr. Taylor, so I have to go back and look at that. There are also transportation. There's a Senate form and a House form, but the Senate form is due at the end of this month, and the House is due at the 7th of February.
So those forms were distributed last week for on Friday. Correct. So I'll get those distributed to members. I know several members have those forms and have been actively working on requests, but I will circle back with you, council member, to make certain that you are aware of the process.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're what?
Thank you for that. I'm not seeing any other lights. I had two items in reading the however many page tracking bill. I found two that caught my attention and just want to kind of learn a little bit more. There was one 5286, if I got the number correctly, is about jurisdictions getting support for increased police costs near state hospitals. And I was wondering, is that, actually Mr. Boki's in the room, is that something that Lakewood is pushing, or has the county weighed in on that one at all?
We will be signing in favor. It's City of Lakewood and the City of Medical Lake, cities that host, of course, Western State and Eastern State, to give them more resources.
Okay, thank you. And then my second one is House Bill 1164, expanding the UGA for residential development. I saw some Pierce County folks on there and I was trying to wrap my head around how that works with the UGA or the GMA, I should say. Sorry, too many acronyms.
Yeah, there's several bills that
Like-
either look to extend urban services outside the UGA, expand the UGA, ADUs. There are a lot of those bills. At this point, talking to some of my friends who are involved in those issues, they're not, we'd be surprised if they move forward.
Okay. That one was concerning, just we've expanded a lot in Pierce County, so we want to,
Those are bills we see almost every session.
okay. Okay. Well, thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Shaw? Seeing none, thank you so much for your work and any last minute comments?
I just hope it slows down a little bit. It
We'll
is
see.
an amazing pace they're doing right now. Thank
Okay,
you so much.
well, thanks for trying to keep up with them. Appreciate it. Okay, that brings us to item number 3, which is review of our upcoming council meeting. Ms. Long.
Thank you. So this is tomorrow's regular council meeting agenda. It is amended. And we'll start with your consent agenda, and you have a couple of items for introduction and scheduling. The first is an ordinance, and that's O 2025-502. This is canceling certain uncollectible personal property taxes. You'll be referring this to rules and operations and setting the final for February 11th. The resolution is R 2025-101. This is calling for the election of a 21-member charter review commission during the 2025 primary and general elections. This, you'll be referring to rules as well and setting the final on this for February 18th. You have no items on your consent for, no proposals for final action. You do have one item under grants, and this is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration Fish Passage Barrier Removal, Chambers Creek Estuary Restoration, and this is from Surface Water Management. Mr. Boki will brief you on that shortly. And if everyone's okay with that, we'll remove that italicized language for tomorrow's agenda. And then you do have one other item on your consent, and that is a motion approving final settlement in the matter of the Wellspring Family Services versus Pierce County matter. And I think you are all familiar with that. Moving to section 7, you do have one proclamation tomorrow, and that is designating the 2024 Sumner High School football team as athletic ambassadors to Pierce County, Washington, and that was requested by Councilmember Herrera. You have no resolutions on this agenda or ordinances, so those are your agenda items for tomorrow afternoon's council meeting.
Okay, any questions about the agenda tomorrow? What are the school colors for Sumner High School? Does anybody know?
Purple and white and silver.
But remember, we have pictures tomorrow.
Nice is
I have a lot of purple though. Okay, thank you.
I don't think I have
Nice is
any
green.
purple.
I will tell you what these
Or
are
your
for in a
jacket.
second. They're not related to that.
Oh,
Good point. Okay. There are no amendments because there's actually no legislation on the general agenda. So that brings us to grant reports. So Mr. Boki.
Thank you, Chair Hitchin, Paul Boki, council staff. The grant report, as mentioned, is from the NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Just to talk about the grant, they're making about $75 million available under the bipartisan infrastructure law. Purpose being that this funding will support projects that reopen migratory pathways and restore access to healthy habitat for fish around the country. The decision date, they're accepting proposals between $750,000 and $8 million, with the typical funding anticipated to range between $3 and $5 million. The request that we have in front of you today from the Surface Water Management Department or Surface Water Management Group is for $5 million from this fund. So it'd be a substantial amount of the total. I mean, we're talking nationally $75 million. This is for the aforementioned Chambers Creek Estuary restoration. Provide funding for the advancement of 5 advanced studies that will be the foundation of the Chambers Bay Estuary Restoration Project. These key studies will outline realistic timelines, permitting requirements, and cost estimations for a project that will restore up to 180 acres of the Chambers Creek Estuary and open up 7.5 miles of pristine habitat to 5 species of salmon in Pierce County. There is no match requirement. They are working in the item is in the capital facilities plan. And Mr. Sean Goldsmith from Surface Water Management is on the line to answer your questions.
Thank you for the review. Mr. Goldsmith, anything you want to share with us? And then I'll see if my colleagues have questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Council. For the record, my name is Sean Goldsmith, Surface Water Management. I just want to thank the Council for their time to look over this grant. It's a very important project. We've been looking at all opportunities to find funding, local, state, federal, and this is the last opportunity for this particular grant. The bipartisan infrastructure law is going to be sunset with this grant being the last round. So presenting this project as an opportunity for funding, and thank you for your time. Welcome to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you for that. Councilmember Krueger.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for this information. And I just wanted to ask, so this is $5 million for 5 studies that are going to chart the route or chart the course for future actions, which are planning to restore the estuary and then open up 7.5 miles to 5 species of salmon. Is there no salmon or anything there at this point in time?
There are salmon present. Currently, the Chambers Creek Dam is an impediment to fish passage. There's salmon ladders that are adjacent to the dam, but in terms of actual fish passability up Chambers Creek throughout the watershed, this is the most downstream barrier to the bay.
The biggest impediment?
Correct.
So to speak. And I guess I'm looking for a definition of, maybe it's in the paperwork somewhere I could look at later, but when it says restore, I'm looking for a definition of what it is now and what it will be after, well, the $5 million is just for studies. So there's going to be needed additional dollars to restore it, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so this is just the plan is the $5 million. And the plan is that there's going to be a design that it's restored. So I could have a picture of that. And then it's going to open up habitat. I guess I'm wanting to look or an understanding also of what will be different from the impediment now versus what it will look like and how many more fish it's going to attract.
Correct. So this grant application is to set that blueprint to get realistic permitting requirements as well as cost estimations, preliminary looks, and last year we completed a type size location study for the existing Chambers Creek Bridge. The vision would include removal of the Chambers Creek Dam that currently is the impediment to fish passage. It's been defunct for over 40 years. So right now it's just as a fish passage impediment. Would also require removal and replacement of the existing Chambers Creek Bridge with one that is more pedestrian friendly as well as one that is adaptable to climate change impacts. It also will then lead to downstream by the bay restoration on near shore properties to allow for hospitable habitat for fish. So this grant application is to set all those projects in motion and outline what exactly is needed from the federal permitters as well as what our engineering work will need to be focusing on.
And can you also tell me in terms of assuming, we have the studies done, and then assuming there are the dollars available to actually do the work. And then will there be an estimate on what it will cost to maintain that, in the sense that as nature is not static, all of this work to make it real pretty and passable, that there will be trees that fall or more vegetation that falls into the water and weeds that grow up and invasive species. What will it take to maintain the pretty, pristine, original, once the project is done, to maintain that in the future?
We'll have to outline the actual requirements of that. Maintenance for long-term use. As of right now, we're looking at what the Chambers Creek Bridge needs in its existing form. Replacing that bridge will save us considerable amount of maintenance for that bridge. In terms of the dollar amounts, I can't give you an accurate number. I would hesitate to provide that prior to these studies being completed.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for the questions. Any other questions for staff on this? Councilmember Ayala.
Thank you, Chair. I'm curious if in the process to get to this point, there was any collaboration with now Parks Tacoma, who engaged in a similar project. I'm going to say about a year, maybe a year and a half ago, around their Titlow area. And I know Titlow and this space, they're not too far from one another.
Correct. Most coordination has actually been with our Pierce County Parks Department. They own a decent amount of land in the Chambers Canyon. Metro Parks in Tacoma actually doesn't own any of the properties, but we're more than open to any opportunities to collaborate with future partners.
Thank you.
Thank you for the questions. Vice Chair Herrera.
Thank you. When it comes to the grant, you're saying that this is kind of some of the last ones that are coming up. What's your thought on our competitiveness of actually getting this grant? And then if we don't get it, what would be the path forward for this really important project?
It's a great question. This will be a highly competitive round. I think that there is nationally, it's known that this type of funding will not be available under the next administration. It will be quite competitive. However, we do have other paths forward in terms of local funds that we have allocated, as well as looking at future budget needs for local government through the surface water management funds to continue the work. We're also going to continue to look at state resources and potentially reaching out to state legislatures when we have a confirmed plan and estimations to go after those kind of funds.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for the questions. Councilmember Denson.
Thank you, Chair. And kind of along those lines, knowing how competitive this is going to be, I know when I met with the Nisqually tribe late last year, they expressed huge interest in this project. This was like the #1 thing that they led off with. So I assume they're providing a letter of support. You guys are talking to the tribe?
Correct. We actually have a quarterly and then also a bi-monthly meeting with all 4 federally recognized tribes, as well as the stakeholders that have been involved. So the South Puget Sound Salmon Enhancement Group and Forterra have done a lot of work in this area. Yes, the Nisqually tribe have repeatedly stated their interest in this, and we have kept in touch with their fisheries folks to ensure that they are kept in the loop along the entire way that we're doing this process.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Goldsmith. I'm not seeing any other questions. Anyone oppose having this on the consent agenda? We can always pull it off if something, okay, we'll leave it on the consent agenda with the italicized part taken off. Thank you very much. And if people have other questions, they can reach out to staff or Mr. Goldsmith. Okay, that brings us to item number 4, review of committee agendas.
All right, thank you. So this afternoon, you do have, at 1:30, you have a special meeting of the Flood Control Zone District Board of Supervisors. And tomorrow, your first meeting tomorrow is your noon study session. You do have a couple of items in addition to your usual agenda. Under Chair's topics, there'll be a discussion of boards and commissions and also the WASAC dues discussion. at 3 p.m. is your regular council meeting. And then on Wednesday, January 29th, beginning at 10 a.m., we have the special study session for purposes of the parliamentary procedure training, and that will be in chambers here. You'll be seated. The trainer's preference is that you're seated at the table versus up on the dais that we did talk about before. So, and those are your meetings for this week.
Thank you for that. Any questions on Councilmember Gruber?
Thank you, Chair. Is the parliamentary procedure class a public venue? So it will be
Yep,
Zoom?
it is.
Okay,
It's a
thank you.
Special meeting.
Wait, if any of our other community members would like to review parliamentary procedures, we're gonna do it. They can zoom in, or I guess show up in person if they want to sit in here and stare at us. Okay. Any other items for the week? Otherwise, we're gonna turn this over to Mr. Taylor to talk through administrative items.
All right, thank you. Council members have some updates on vacant positions and hiring, as well as limited duration employment. So first, I want to make the council aware that I'll be starting the process to continue the employment of Ms. Tillman for an additional period of time. Ms. Tillman was originally brought in as an extra hire last fall to provide clerk support for the office as we had vacancies that had occurred. Ms. Tillman currently supports the reception function in the office. She also supports this study session, Monday study session, as well as the Tuesday study session, proposal distribution, other tasks as needed. I'm bringing this to your attention because extra hire positions are generally limited to 6 months in duration under the county's administrative guidelines. Ms. Tillman is approaching that limit, but the support that she provides is still needed in the office. Last fall, when the position was authorized by the Rules Committee, it was authorized as a limited duration position, but it was actually hired as an extra hire position. Limited duration positions are authorized to be filled for up to 3 years of in duration. So consistent with the prior rules approval, as well as the Chief of Staff's authority under the council's administrative guidelines, I'll be initiating the process to convert that extra hire to a limited duration position. That will enable the position to continue. One thing to note is that with that conversion, Ms. Tillman will be eligible for certain benefits, including paid holiday, sick and vacation leave, and health insurance benefits if she chooses to take advantage of those. I'll periodically evaluate the need for the limited duration position. Limited duration employees, like all council employees, are at will employees. So the need for that will be continuously reevaluated as we bring new staff on board, as we transition into our new office space. The council does have budget capacity for the position. We have salary savings as well as some under expenditures in the budget. So there's sufficient budgetary capacity for that conversion. And so I just want to bring it to your attention and then answer any questions if you have them at this point in time.
Thank you for the overview, and it's always weird when we're doing this when the people are in the room, but Ms. Tillman's been value added to the work we do every day. Any questions for Mr. Taylor on that? Okay, well, I'm not seeing any lights, so thank you.
Okay.
Other items?
Couple more updates. So clerk to the council. As you're aware, the position closed January 3rd. Application review, phone screening of candidates has occurred. I spent most of last Friday actually on the phone with candidates. Progress on hiring is on track in accordance with the goals that the county has to complete those processes. Currently finalizing the details for panel interview, hoping to have panel interviews completed within the next 2 to 3 weeks. I'm working with the chair in regard to the panel interviews. And so we're keeping that on track for filling that very important position to the council. In a similar vein, the policy analyst, senior policy analyst for human services, that closed January the 20th. We received about 3 dozen applications. Those have gone through an initial review. There's some additional review that's happening with Carrie Waterland. The goal is to reduce that 3 dozen down to about 10 candidates for purposes of a phone interview and then movement to a panel interview. So we're doing our best to keep that moving so that you can get that position filled quickly. in support of those hiring processes, working currently with HR on getting staff and elected officials, if they're interested, scheduled on a refresher on legal and effective interviewing. The county has a short class on that, anybody participating in the hiring process, interviewing process is encouraged to take. I know many of you, or at least the members that were here last year, several of you have taken that class. I've taken it, but this is a refresher opportunity. I'll share details on that in the next couple of weeks. And that's what I have for hiring and the position conversion. Be happy to answer any questions for you.
Thank you. Any questions? And I will add, an obvious item that was not listed was chief of staff. That process is moving forward. Ms. Long and I are kind of taking point on that. Happy to chat offline about why. And, but we are looking at starting the process of going through those that have applied and do the initial screening processes and see where things are. But we're just working through details. I also did reach out to Executive Mello to ask for his timeline and processes and things, just so it's all written out. I decided not to try and reinvent the wheel and remember what we did. Because I appreciated both our process and the staff's process. I'll be meeting with our county staff, our council staff tomorrow, and that's one of the questions I want to check in with them. But I also look to all of you. I'll be reaching out via email to, or during study sessions, talk through, are there things that we want to change or think about? So, and we can chat about that, but that is why that one was not on Mr. Taylor's list. So, other items, Mr. Taylor?
That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. The only thing, I'll go to other business, the little number one, and I forgot that Mr. Morel or Councilmember Morel was not going to be here. On Friday, I want to say it was Friday, Good Roots Northwest did the ribbon cutting for the first, number one, food lockers in a college campus in the west side of the United States. So they're pretty proud of that. And so it's at Bates Technical College South in their den, and Mr. Dominique was there. And I believe that there was a picture in the legislator at the very, very bottom, but if you want to kind of see what they look like, but it's a closed system, so only students can access it, which then allows for it to be serving the community that they're trying to serve. So students of Bates Technical College, of many who are reskilling or upskilling or changing careers or just getting a new certificate fresh out of high school. There's all of those types of students that a lot of times there's just a lot going on. And so this is a great way to really support them right there while they're on campus, as they're headed home, or when they get there and they need something to eat. So I think it's a phenomenal win for our county, and they're continuing to there's other campuses across our region that are like, when do we get ours? So we'll see what happens with it. But Stacy was there and did a phenomenal job with all of her team to talk through it. And they're just, the artwork on the lockers themselves is really beautiful. So it was a good time. And so I've brought you each one of these, so you can do whatever you want with them, but they're just kind of fun, and it was a really good ceremony. So, okay, seeing no other business before our council and study session, we are adjourned. Have a wonderful day and see you in a little bit in flood control.